Let me ask you something straight up. How many times have you walked away from a conversation with a woman feeling like something could have happened, but you just could not quite figure out what went wrong? You said the right things. You made her laugh. The vibe seemed good. But then she disappeared. No text back. No second date. Just silence. Here's what I want to tell you. And this might sound strange at first, but stick with me. The reason she disappeared has almost nothing to do with what you said and everything to do with what you did not communicate without words. That is the real game changer most men never understand, especially by the time they reach our age. I have spent years talking to women about what actually makes them feel drawn to a man, and I have discovered something fascinating. When women describe the men they remember, the ones they actually think about weeks or months later, they rarely talk about how impressive those men were. They talk about how those men made them feel. And here is the kicker. That feeling is created through something so simple, so obvious actually, that most men completely miss it while they are busy trying to be interesting or impressive or funny. Think about the last time you felt genuinely comfortable around someone. Not excited or impressed, but actually comfortable. Your shoulders were relaxed. You did not feel like you had to perform. You were just there, being yourself, and that person was just there with you. Do you remember that feeling? That is exactly what women are looking for, and most men are too busy trying to create excitement to ever provide it. Here is where it gets really interesting. Women will forgive a lot of things. A man who is not the wealthiest, a man who is not the most handsome, a man who does not have all the answers. But what they will not forgive, what they will actually run away from, is a man who makes them feel unsafe or unsure. And I do not just mean physically unsafe. I mean emotionally unsafe. Unsafe in the sense that they cannot relax. Unsafe in the sense that they feel like they are being evaluated or judged or manipulated. Now, most men think they are creating safety, but they are actually doing the opposite. They are creating pressure. They are trying so hard to impress that they are making the entire interaction feel like an audition. The woman is sitting there thinking, am I good enough? Does he like me? What does he want from me? And when a woman is in that headspace, nothing you say is going to matter. She is too busy being anxious to actually connect with you. So what actually creates that feeling of safety? What makes a woman finally exhale and think, okay, I can actually be myself around this guy? It is something I call presence without agenda. And I know that sounds like some self-help cliche, but what I mean specifically is this. It is the ability to be completely present with a woman without needing anything from her in that moment. Not her approval, not her affection, not her validation, just her presence. When a woman feels that you are truly okay whether she likes you or not, something shifts inside her. She stops performing. She stops worrying about whether she is doing this right. And when she stops performing, when she finally relaxes, that is when real attraction can actually begin to grow. But here is the practical part that most men miss. How do you actually communicate this presence without agenda? You do not just say it. You show it through your actions, through your energy, and through something that sounds almost too simple to matter, but absolutely does. The way you listen. Most men are not actually listening when they are with a woman. They are thinking about what to say next. They are thinking about how to impress her. They are waiting for their turn to talk again. And women can feel that. It is one of those things that people sense even if they cannot quite put it into words. She is talking, and you are hearing her, but she knows you are not really listening. There is a difference. Listening means you are actually curious about what she is saying. You are not trying to change her mind or convince her or prove something. You are just genuinely interested in understanding how she sees the world. When you listen like that, when you ask follow-up questions about what she actually cares about, when you remember things she told you from previous conversations, something registers in her brain. She thinks, this man actually sees me. He actually cares about what I think. And that matters more to attraction than you would ever guess. Here is another layer that ties into this whole thing. The way you handle moments of disagreement or tension tells her everything about whether she can actually trust you. Because here is what happens in real relationships. You will disagree. She will say something you do not necessarily agree with or do things that frustrate you. How you handle that moment is crucial. A lot of men try to be so agreeable that they just go along with everything, and that actually backfires. Women do not respect that. They sense that you are not being genuine. But other men get defensive or argumentative, and that also backfires because now she feels like she is being attacked. What actually works is something different. It is being able to acknowledge her perspective, express your own thoughts calmly without needing her to agree with you, and then move forward without holding resentment. When you can do that, when she sees that you can handle disagreement without it becoming a power struggle, she feels safe. She thinks, I can actually be honest with this man without it blowing up in my face. That is huge for women over time. Most of them have experienced men who get angry when they do not get their way or who punish them for having a different opinion. So when they encounter a man who can actually handle her having thoughts and feelings that differ from his, it is almost shocking. It stands out. Now let me talk about something that sounds physical but is actually psychological. The way you take up space in the world communicates something fundamental about your confidence and your peace with yourself. I am not talking about being aggressive or loud or trying to dominate the room. I am talking about something simpler. Are you comfortable in your own body? When you are sitting with a woman, are you fidgeting? Are you crossing your arms protectively? Are you making yourself smaller? Or are you actually settled in who you are? When you can just sit comfortably, when your energy is calm and grounded, when you are not fighting with yourself, she feels that, and she responds to it. This is where a lot of men in our age range actually have an advantage if they would just realize it. By 50 or 60, you have lived enough to know that most things do not matter that much. You have been through enough that you are not as desperate to prove something. If you can actually tap into that wisdom, if you can show up as someone who is comfortable in his own skin, that is magnetic to women at any age. But comfort in your own skin is not something you can fake. Women can tell the difference between a man who is genuinely okay with himself and a man who is pretending to be. Real confidence is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not need to. Here is something else that ties into all of this that I think is really important. The stories you tell about yourself matter way more than most men realize. Not in the sense of trying to impress her with big accomplishments, but in the sense of how you talk about your life, your relationships, your past. When you talk about your life with bitterness or regret or resentment, especially about past relationships, women hear something very specific. They hear that you have not actually processed and learned from those experiences. And they think, if something goes wrong with me, will this be how he talks about me later? But when you can talk about your past with some perspective, when you can acknowledge mistakes you made without blaming everyone else, when you can appreciate what you learned, even from relationships that did not work out, that tells a completely different story. It tells her that you are someone who actually grows, someone who takes responsibility, someone who will not just turn her into a villain in a story he tells later. That level of maturity and self-awareness is incredibly attractive because it is actually rare. Most people are stuck in their narratives, always playing the victim or the hero. The ability to step outside that and see yourself clearly is something that women respect deeply. Now, let me address something that a lot of men in this age range are wondering about. How does all of this relate to physical attraction and physical connection? Because obviously that matters too, right? Here is what I think most men do not understand. The physical stuff does not work the way it does when you are 25. A woman in her 40s, 50s, or 60s is not going to be aroused the same way by pure physical moves or techniques. What actually arouses her at this point in her life is feeling genuinely desired by someone she trusts. It is feeling like someone actually sees her, actually wants her specifically, not just wants a woman. That desire has to come from genuine appreciation, not just of her body, but of who she is as a person. When a man can communicate that he actually likes her, that he is attracted to her because she is her, not because she fits some standard, that does something to a woman that no physical technique ever could. So the physical part actually starts with all the other stuff we have been talking about. It starts with making her feel safe. It starts with making her feel seen. It starts with genuine presence and patience. When all of that is in place, the physical stuff becomes natural because she is already there with you emotionally. Let me tell you about something I call the consistency test. Most women, whether they realize it or not, are watching whether you are the same person in different contexts. Are you respectful to the waiter? Are you kind to your mother? Are you honest when it would be easier to lie? How do you treat people who cannot do anything for you? These things matter so much more than men realize because women are trying to answer a very practical question. If I actually let this man into my life, if I trust him with my vulnerability, will he be the same decent person in 6 months that he is right now? Or was this just an act? The men who stand out are the ones who are genuinely the same person, whether anyone is watching or not. Not perfect. Nobody is perfect, but consistent, reliable, actually who they say they are. Now, here is something most dating advice does not talk about, and I think it is crucial for men in our age range. The older we get, the more our lives have history. We have ex-wives or ex-partners. We have children or complicated family situations. We have careers or lack of careers. We have financial situations that are not always ideal. And a lot of men think these things are obstacles to attraction. But here is the truth. Women are not attracted to men who pretend those things do not exist. They are attracted to men who own those things, who can talk about them honestly without complaining endlessly or making excuses, but also without pretending they do not matter. When you can say, look, my previous marriage did not work out, and here is what I have learned from that. Or I do not have a ton of money, but I am not ashamed of that, and I manage what I have responsibly. Women respect that. It shows you are not trying to be something you are not. Let me also talk about something that is often overlooked. The way you talk about your wants and needs in a relationship. A lot of men either overshare too early and scare women away, or they hide their needs entirely and then resent women later when those needs are not being met. The sweet spot is being able to communicate what you are looking for without demanding it or making it her responsibility to provide it. You can say, I am looking for someone I can actually talk to, someone I feel a real connection with. But you do not make it her job to provide that. You do not say, you need to be more affectionate or you need to be less independent. You stay flexible and you let things develop naturally. There is also something about humor that I think is important to mention. The right kind of humor can build so much intimacy so quickly. But here is the key. It has to be humor that includes her, not humor that is at her expense. It has to be laughing with her about life, not making her the butt of a joke. When you can find things genuinely funny together, when you can be playful with each other, when you do not take everything so seriously, that builds a connection that is hard to replicate. But it has to be genuine. If you are forcing jokes or trying too hard to be funny, it just does not land the same way. Here is another practical thing that most men do not think about. The way you handle your own emotions is communicated constantly to the woman you are with. If you are angry, does she feel scared? If you are sad, does she feel like it is her job to fix you? If you are anxious, does your anxiety become her anxiety? The ability to feel your feelings without putting them on her is actually one of the most attractive things a man can demonstrate. It says, I am a complete person. I do not need you to make me feel okay. I can handle my own stuff, and I can be here for you without you having to manage my emotional state. And connected to that is something about boundaries. Women actually respect boundaries. They might push against them sometimes, but on a deep level, they respect a man who knows what he will and will not accept. Boundaries show self-respect, and self-respect is incredibly attractive. Now, let me address something that comes up a lot with men in our age range. There is often a fear that we are aging out of the dating market, that younger women will not be interested, that we have missed our window. And I want to be really honest about this. First of all, if you are only interested in significantly younger women, you are setting yourself up for disappointment, and also you are probably missing out on connections with women your own age who have so much more in common with you. But second, and this is important, the factors that make a man attractive do not go away with age. If anything, they get stronger if you have actually done the work on yourself. A man who is calm, confident, genuine, and present is attractive at 35, and he is still attractive at 65. Actually, he might be more attractive because he has had more time to become those things. The women who are attracted to older men are attracted to them because of qualities that develop with time, not in spite of age. They want someone who has lived enough to know what matters, someone who is not playing games, someone who actually knows how to treat a woman. Let me also talk about vulnerability in a way that is different from what you usually hear about it. A lot of the time, people talk about vulnerability like it means spilling your whole trauma history on a first date. But that is not what I mean. Real vulnerability is the ability to admit when you do not know something. To say, I am not sure how to handle this situation. To admit that you got something wrong. To show that you are human and not pretending to be something you are not. When a man can do that, when he can be imperfect and not defensive about it, women feel like they can be imperfect too. And that is when real intimacy actually starts to happen. Here is something I think is really worth considering as we wrap this up. The best version of a man is not someone who is always trying to seduce or impress women. It is someone who is living his life in a way that feels authentic to him, who is pursuing things that matter to him, who is becoming the kind of person he actually respects. Because here is what happens when you do that. You naturally start attracting the right people. Not through manipulation or game playing, but through actually being someone worth being attracted to. And that is the thing that changes everything. When you stop trying to get women to like you and you start focusing on becoming someone you actually like, on living in a way that aligns with your values, on building your life in a way that feels meaningful, women feel that shift. They sense that you are coming from a different place. You are not desperate. You are not performing. You are just being yourself. And that is what actually creates lasting connection. That is what makes women remember you. That is what actually builds something real.